Israel's Somaliland move was not a mistake, it was a strategic stress test. There has been a lot of noise over Israel's decision to recognize Somaliland. Critics are calling it reckless, destabilizing, even dangerous. That reaction tells you less about Somaliland and far more about the assumptions Israel just shattered. Let's get something straight at the outset. This move was not about Gaza, it was not about symbolism, and it was not about impulsive intelligence hubris. It was about maritime reality in a region that has been allowed to decay under proxy warfare, denial, and selective enforcement. Somaliland sits at the mouth of the Gulf of Aden, adjacent to the Bab al Mandeb Strait, directly across from Yemen. That is not abstract geography, it is one of the most critical shipping corridors on Earth. Houthis attack vessels there, Iran supplies and directs them, global trade depends on that corridor staying open. For years, everyone acknowledged the threat while tolerating the chaos. And that chaos was not theoretical. It meant Houthi anti-ship missiles fired at commercial vessels with impunity. It meant piracy networks along the Somali coast exploiting the same vacuum, turning one of the world's most important trade corridors into a gray zone, where no one was fully responsible and everyone passed the cost downstream. Somaliland was the exception. For more than 3 decades, it denied pirates access to its coastland. It enforced order that Somalia could not. That record matters. It signals capability, not rhetoric. Israel did something different. It inserted itself diplomatically into a space others assumed would remain weak, fragmented, and exploitable. That is why the backlash came so fast. Now let's address the favorite talking point of the critics. They claim Israel's recognition of Somaliland will fuel extremism. That argument collapses the moment you say it out loud. Islamist movements do not radicalize because Israel acts. They radicalize because Islamist ideology rewards violence, martyrdom, and confrontation with Jews regardless of borders, concessions, or context. Al-Shabaab, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, they do not need Israeli actions to justify violence. Their doctrine already provides that justification. Israel's presence is not the cause, it is the excuse. The idea that Israeli restraint moderates Islamist movements has failed everywhere it has been tried. What these movements require is chaos, not because chaos happens accidentally, but because chaos allows ideology to replace governance and grievance to replace accountability. Somaliland for more than 3 decades has been a rare exception to that pattern, and that is precisely why this recognition matters. Now let's talk about Egypt. Egypt's reaction had nothing to do with Somali unity. It had everything to do with control. Egypt's strategic leverage rests on its role as the Central Arab guarantor of the Red Sea and Suez Canal security. Any shift in maritime monitoring, intelligence, visibility, or security partnerships near the Bab al-Mandeb directly affects Cairo's influence and bargaining power. An Israel-aligned Somaliland introduces redundancy into a space Egypt has long treated as its strategic backyard. Egypt does not fear instability, it fears losing monopoly. That same logic explains China's response as well. China's objections are not about Somalia, they are about precedent. Beijing opposes recognition of Somaliland because it opposes recognition of any functional breakaway region that undermines its positions on Taiwan, Xinjiang, Tibet, or Hong Kong. That is not international law, that is self-preservation. And then there are the critics who argue this move does nothing for Israel's security. That misunderstands how modern deterrence works. Israel does not need a base in Somaliland. It does not need troops on the ground. What it needs is visibility, optionality, and redundancy, intelligence cooperation, maritime domain awareness, port influence, diplomatic access in a corridor where Israeli commerce is routinely threatened. Strategic positioning is not about conquest, it is about denying adversaries uncontested space. That is exactly what unsettles Iran, China, Egypt, and their partners. The backlash is the proof of concept. Somalia's outrage, Egypt's anxiety, China's condemnation, and Islamist propaganda, all of it confirms the same thing. Israel moved into a space others assumed would remain governed by ambiguity, ideology, and selective enforcement. Recognition of Somaliland is not a final move, it is an opening. It forces a question many would prefer to avoid. Who actually secures critical global checkpoints? Those who tolerate proxy warfare or those willing to disrupt it? Israel chose to answer that question instead of deferring it. That is not recklessness, that is strategy. That was the move.